Well, what do we have here? Today we are talking about a name that we have been discussing as a former Vancouver Canuck, as a potential Canuck trade target for quite a few weeks now. Because we're going on to an interview this player had done recently where he discusses his departure from and his time in Vancouver. Take a look at this piece, it'll be linked in the description. The coolest 6 months of my career. Why Nikita Zadorov left Vancouver and thrived in Boston. This article will be linked in the description. You know what else is linked in the description? It's our ExpressVPN affiliate link. If you want to save some money on your VPN and get some free months in the process, check out Express using our link. It helps out the channel too. But also, of course, linked in the description is the RG article that we are going to be reading. It talks about defenseman Nikita Zadorov, who's 29 and who had signed a 6-year deal worth $30 million in July with the Boston Bruins, and now he has found his niche with the club. He sacrificed some offense to bring more stable defensive performances on the Bruins' top pair, but it's allowed him to truly excel in Boston. Nikita Zadorov is currently logging the most minutes in the Bruins, second only to Charlie McAvoy with 1959. At 29 years old, Zadorov is seeking his highest average on-ice utilization in Boston, having far outperformed his time in Chicago, Calgary, and Vancouver. And just to pause it all up before we dive into the actual interview portion of this video and the article, I did find it interesting how it talks about Nikita Zadorov's usage in Boston. If you head over to just the numbers of everything, yes, it is true. Nikita Zadorov has been utilized a lot more with the Bees than he was played in Vancouver. I mean, he played 24 minutes against the Ottawa Senators, 21 minutes against the Sharks, 22 minutes against the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's been a guy eating minutes like crazy for this Bruins team, and he's on pace for 18 points in 82 games played. It is a little bit of a decline from the numbers he had had prior to his Boston days, and it certainly is a cry from what he had done in the playoffs last year with the Vancouver Canucks. He had scored 8 points in 13 playoff games against the Predators and the Oilers, also contributing to some of the more clutch and out-of-nowhere goals that we had seen from the Canucks in that run. I mean, Nikita Zadorov had this weird ability to just find the back of the net in the most opportune times and score the most important goals. He was playing like a number one D-man in the playoffs in that year. It was unquestionable. And so with the Boston Bruins, it's why he ended up signing a long-term, heavy deal with that team, and that leads us nicely into the comments that Zadorov says about his acquisition in Boston. "Nobody even looks at my points here," Zadorov said. "They didn't sign me to score goals or rack up assists. Yes, in last year's playoffs, I got lucky. They were flying in from improbable angles. It was my overall play, not my goals in the Stanley Cup Playoffs, that had a very big impact on the interest that teams had in me in the offseason." And yeah, I'm not going to disagree necessarily. A lot of the goals that he had scored were just kind of like, okay, how did that go in? He had scored that short side snipe on the rush like twice. It was ridiculous. I mean, out of Nikita Zadorov, you don't really expect that kind of goal-scoring proficiency nor accuracy. But anyways, he does say that the goals were going and everybody was talking about how he was playing, and it was a really big highlight, just his physical game, his defensive prowess on top of the offense. When I talked to the Boston management about why they signed me, they said, "We saw you play in the playoffs, and we think you can do that every night. Our job is to get it out of you," said Zadorov. "They told me, your job is to play against top players, to win all the fights against them, and the most important thing is that they should hate playing against you. That's why I'm here." And to be honest, this is an element that I think the Vancouver Canucks have lacked quite a bit over the past few months here in 24-25. The lack of pushback, the lack of a fully committed defensive menace. Not even really a defensive menace, but an aggressive menace. A guy who's not afraid to stand up for his team, to fight the fight, to get back into the swing of things, and to start swinging his fists if he needs to, whilst delivering some big body checks in the process. Nikita Zadorov does all of that so well, and because other teams are a little bit scared to go up against him or a team that he is on, I think it really diminished the level of intensity and potentially the fear factor that the Vancouver Canucks had when going up against teams this year. You wouldn't want to mess with JT Miller when he was at his best. You wouldn't want to mess with Nikita Zadorov. You wouldn't want to mess with Tyler Myers or Ian Cole. I mean, Myers is still in Vancouver. Miller is still too, for now. And Nikita Zadorov is gone. But still, because Miller has been playing pretty poorly this season, because Tyler Myers is getting burned, because he's getting top 2 minutes all of a sudden, things have been looking a lot more like the Canucks are treading water at this point, rather than enforcing themselves physically like they had done last year. Nikita Zadorov brought that style of play to Vancouver, and now he's bringing it to Boston. Sometimes, that physicality can land Zadorov in hot water, earning a string of penalties of late that have proven to be costly. However, according to Zadorov, that extra gear of aggression has a way of paying off when it truly matters. In every game, there's an additional battle happening within the game itself, and you aim to win that. You need to do things to break the concentration of your opponent, said Zadorov. The average fan might not notice this, and they'll think that you're just getting some stupid penalty. But really, you're sending a message here, either to your team or to the other team, and psychologically, you win out. You need to feel it, and I think I have already enough experience in both the regular season and playoffs to know when and what to do. Certainly a big confident statement there out of Big Z. He's always been a really good interview, so I'm not surprised. Let's dive into some of the comments that Zadorov made about the Vancouver Canucks, because there is an entire section of this article that talks straight up just about Vancouver. I was ready to sign with Calgary. I told the GM that I wanted to stay, and I was ready to consider extending my contract. But no one offered us anything, said Zadorov. Every other pending free agent was getting contract offers at the time, so Dan and I decided we had to leave before the trade deadline. Add to that, he gets traded over to Vancouver, and he says here that those were probably the coolest 6 months of my career. It's a blast to play hockey there. The fans are awesome, the city is cool, the team is cool too. The team, the coaching staff, everything was super. Head coach Tocchet, the Sedins, Foote, Gonchar, wherever you look, there's a Hall of Famer, said Zadorov regarding his admiration for the Canucks organization. You can learn a lot from everyone. When Sergei Gonchar came in, he worked a lot with all the defensemen individually. I think those 6 months were a big boost for my career. I changed a lot as a player. Then he talks about the Vancouver Canucks playoff atmosphere. The playoffs in Vancouver were crazy. I remember that before, the atmosphere during the Cup in San Jose, Nashville, Vegas, Edmonton, Calgary. It seemed really cool to me, but what happened in Vancouver was on another level, said Zadorov. In terms of energy, in terms of volume, in terms of how the city lived hockey, during the playoffs you try to eat at home, but when you go out for dinner, you don't have the single chance to pay for it yourself. Either the restaurant owners will come over right away, or someone at the next table will pay for you. The city lived for hockey, and I've never seen anything like it. Oh boy, we treated Zadorov well, didn't we, Vancouver? That is great. However, things didn't really end well with the Canucks. Yes, Vancouver showed interest, Zadorov answered, confirming that he had talked to about 20 teams, and in terms of money, it was basically the same contract that I got in Boston. Vancouver didn't offend me, everything they offered was good. There were a couple of moments in the negotiations that I didn't like, both the way they were conducted and the way the information was presented to me, but that wasn't the main thing. In the end, when it was time to make a decision, we weighed everything up, and a couple of factors played into the fact that it was more comfortable for our family to play in the US than in Canada, said Zadorov. You make a list and you check out the boxes, this is more suitable here, this is more suitable there. In the end, we chose what was more relevant for hockey and more relevant for life. Interestingly enough, that actually does contradict what I think Zadorov said about the Canucks earlier on in the year, how he was a little bit kind of offended or taken aback about how the negotiations in Vancouver were ran. Essentially, I think the Canucks didn't want to go to the extra years that Boston did, but the AAV was roughly the same, so Nikita Zadorov went for a little bit more dough and a little bit more time in Boston over sticking in Vancouver, which makes sense, contractually speaking, but I think for the Canucks, especially talking about it all over social media and on the radio, you're really starting to see how Nikita Zadorov's impact is missed in that Canucks locker room. This team is fragile, they're a shell of their former selves, and keeping a guy like Zadorov on the team would have definitely allowed them to keep that momentum up. So ultimately, I do think it might have been a mistake for Vancouver to let him go, but hey, that's neither here nor there. The argument would have still been there, hey, do you want to pay $5 million a year for a third-pairing defenseman behind Soucy and Hughes? But at the end of the day, the Canucks decor is so bad right now, maybe a guy like Zadorov wouldn't have been so bad. Anyways, the article is going to be in the description if you want to go ahead and read that. Let me know in the comment section, what do you think about Nikita Zadorov? Speak it out about Vancouver and the entire free agent negotiation process in Boston. Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. 9 and bye.